You don't all need to run to the door. It's okay. We've got Nick O'Donoghue, head of the British International Investment, the UK's Development Finance Corporation, joining us on the TV screen from London. He should be up any minute. Hi, Nick. Can you hear me?
Hi, William. How are you? Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. So thanks so much for joining us, Nick. We're here with a largely American audience, so we'll just kick right off by giving a little background to the rebranding that you guys have gone through recently. So you were the CDC Group. You're now standing for the Commonwealth Development Corporation. You're now British International Investment. Development has been dropped from your name. Some people are a bit worried about that. Do you think they should be?
No, I don't. I mean, obviously, CDC, the CDC Groups is the world's oldest development finance institution, started in 1948. So when you've had the same name broadly for 73, 74 years, obviously when it changes, that can be a bit of a shock to people. I mean, I think why we changed our name was relatively straightforward. I mean, first of all, because we're not the Center for Disease Control. And I think we were regularly confused. And I am not the chief executive of the Center for Disease Control. So that was one reason. But I think more importantly, we first of all felt that we are the UK's development finance institution, and I think if you look at the other bilateral development finance institutions around the world, you'll find that just by looking at their name or their logo, it's pretty much in pretty much every case very recognizable whose money they represent. So I think we felt that we needed to be more identifiably British. And then in terms of British international investment, I think we wanted to capture the fact that the institution is now much more broad-based. There's obviously a huge overlap, for example, between development finance and climate finance, but they're also very complementary. And so one of the things that we will be doing as part of our new 5-year strategy is having a much greater focus on climate finance, a much greater focus on helping companies transition to a greener economy. So we wanted to capture that. We wanted to capture that in our name. I mean, I think anybody who read our strategy document, which we published at the same time as the name change, will realize that development is still absolutely front and center and at the core of everything that BII does today.
Great. Okay. I want to come back to you on the strategy, but I've got another question kind of relating to the political context. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says that the role of your organization is to provide alternative finance to China. She's being a bit more explicit about China now, and she calls China a malign actor. And how do you plan on going about doing that? And will it clash with your development objectives?
No, I don't think. Look, I'm not going to get involved in commenting on sort of individual individual quotations from our foreign secretary. As I said, I think BII, and if you read the strategy, you'll see very clearly that development lies at the core of that strategy. Any sort of any other narrative it's not something that I would necessarily recognize.
This is something the Foreign Secretary is saying repeatedly about your organization, though. You don't have any sort of...
No, I don't think that's actually correct, William. I don't think she said directly linked BII's activities with any sort of with a specific political narrative like that.
Okay, all right. The head of the IMF, Christina Georgieva, told us earlier today that there is a growing risk of a debt crisis, and there's also concerns about recession in some Western countries. How do you think that will affect BII's work and more broadly the development investment landscape, if those fears do pan out?
No, I think that the situation that the globe finds itself in today presents very significant threats for all of us, but particularly for the countries in which BII operates. We are the UK's development finance institution. We focus exclusively on operating in Africa and in South Asia currently. And I obviously travel extensively there. And when you go there, you can see first of all, we have the challenges that the COVID pandemic created in terms of its obviously health impact and its impact on economic development. And then more recently, the Ukraine crisis and specifically its impact on food security and energy security, and also the pressures that it's putting on many government budgets in particularly well, in Africa and indeed in South Asia. So obviously, from our, that makes development finance and the role of development finance even more important. I mean, our role is to step forward when other people are stepping back, and to provide funding and provide liquidity, provide investment capital to countries. And as you rightly say, many of these countries today are under strain. So therefore, what we do is even more important.
Given all these kind of converging crises and what they're shaping into, are you kind of flexible with it and leaning into a certain area of the strategy in kind of response to developing shocks and things like that? I'm not just thinking about climate, but perhaps food as well. Are you happy to kind of be flexible in your investments as the landscape changes?
Yes, I think you have to remain flexible. On the other hand, you also have to recognize that organizations like BII are long-term investors. So we can't sort of chop and change. We work in 5-year strategy cycles with our government. We just ended one at the end of last year. We began one at the beginning of this year. And so that lays out obviously certain objectives for us. But I think within that, you can certainly tailor your approach to react to specific circumstances. So if you take the area of food security, for example, agriculture and supporting and helping increase productivity in agriculture, improving supply chains and so on, was always an important part of what BII, and in common with most development institutions, did. But I think as you look at what's happening in the world at the moment, you look at what's happening with food prices, you look at the impact that that's causing on really some of the most vulnerable countries and some of the most vulnerable people in those countries. You have to, as a development institution of any sort, and particularly as a development finance institution, you have to think about how can our capital be used to help fund improvements, for example, in productivity in agriculture, fund easier, ensure that food gets to market more easily, and all these things that can help alleviate some of the impacts that we're seeing from what's happening in Ukraine.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about climate finance. BII is basically the UK government's primary tool for distributing climate finance. You spent, I believe, 479 million on climate finance in 2021, according to your annual report, and you guys aim to spend around 30% of your or invest 30% of your capital in climate finance. I think that's right. You're moving into East Asia, kind of coinciding with the UK government's Indo-Pacific foreign policy tilt, and you're also moving into the Caribbean. You've got plans to do that. Could you just talk us through a little bit about how and where that money will be spent?
Yeah, so I think, as I said, climate finance is an integral part now of our investment strategy. And I think that you would find that if you talk to any bilateral development finance institution or any multilateral development finance institution, that helping economies, and remember that the countries that we are investing in are, first of all, didn't cause the climate crisis, and secondly, are among the most vulnerable, and the people in them the most vulnerable to climate change. So it's essential that we as development finance organizations try to provide capital in ways that will help both mitigate and alleviate that. So there are a couple of different broad investment themes. I mean, one is obviously helping to provide capital to support the growth of renewable energy. So whether that's wind or solar or geothermal or hydro, all of those things require significant amounts of capital, and we need to play a part in that. But I think what's probably more important is that we need to not just be doing the same things as everybody else is doing. Obviously, we need a lot of capital to support the growth of wind, solar, and so on. But we also need a lot of capital to go out and do some of the riskier things. So the riskier things in the climate change world are early investments in green hydrogen, for example, early investments and support for battery storage projects, support for electric vehicles, support for electric vehicle infrastructure. All of these things are critically important. They're, I think, a little bit more at the cutting edge than just what are now really becoming almost plain vanilla sort of utility scale solar. So we do both, but we're definitely we see our responsibility as really supporting innovation, supporting the newer solutions.
Fantastic. Nick, I'm so sorry to cut you off there, but we're running out of time. We really appreciate you joining us and sharing BII's plans for the future. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, William. Thank you, everybody. Good night.